The voice comes in like a tremor on the line. Please, please don't talk. Just listen. Dispatch hears breath hitching, wet, like someone trying not to cry and failing. The caller won't give a name. He says there's a girl by the railroad tracks, that she needs help, that he tried to stop himself. Then the line fills with a raw sound, half sob, half apology, and goes dead. Patrol cars rake their lights through the winter dark, snow rutted by boots and steel. They find her face down near a fence, blood stringing through frost crystals like red thread. She lives, barely. Her skull is cracked, memory splintered. The first headline calls him a phantom. Inside the precinct, they give the phantom a nickname, crude and unforgettable, the Weepy-Voiced Killer. St. Paul in 1980 is a grid of sodium lamps and silence after midnight, the kind of quiet that lets a phone ring through a whole neighborhood. The first survivor can't describe her attacker. Concussion stole his face. The only portrait is the voice. Operators replay the tape, leaning in. The man sounds young and ashamed, the words tumbling, the vowels stretched by tears. He can barely say "I hurt her" without choking on it. The officers who hear do not mistake the sobbing for kindness. They hear a compulsion with brakes that don't hold. Summer comes mean and early. June 3rd, 1981, a teenager fresh off a bus from Wisconsin sits in a diner, eyes on the counter pie, the way you do when you've got all your future in a duffel bag. She is 18 in earnest. Her name is Kimberly Compton. A man offers to show her around town. They cross a city that feels friendlier than it is. Later, near a ravine by a river road, the first wounds land. When the police find her, the tally looks like rage pretending to be mercy and failing. The phones start again. "I'm sorry," the voice pleads. I can't stop myself." He tells them the weapon, as if confession were a salve. He weeps so hard he hiccups. He hangs up and calls back. The tape becomes an echo chamber of regret without responsibility. Detectives draw a map and pin threads between attacks and calls, each thread leading not to an address, but to a feeling. Humiliation, panic, a man who hates himself only after he is finished. They push recordings to radio and TV. Listeners call in with guesses, co-workers, neighbors, exes. The sobbing voice could be anybody once you start imagining. Patrols roll harder past bus depots and bars that empty onto lonely blocks. The dispatcher at night pins a scrap of paper near the console. Don't talk. Just listen. It is both instruction and omen. In the summer of 1982, another body turns up in a neat little house. A nurse named Kathleen Greening found in her tub. She is peaceful the way water can make a scene look peaceful, though nothing about it is. No weeping call follows. Investigators wonder if they are looking at a new killer or a careful one, someone learning which parts of himself to hide. The city breathes shallow. The nickname feels less like a joke and more like a mask someone can slip on or off. Late July, a woman with warm laugh lines meets a man in a bar, the Hexagon, the kind of place where everyone knows the jukebox and nobody knows your last name. Her name is Barbara Simons. She tells a waitress she'll be fine, that she's going to the river with the man in the short-sleeved shirt. In the morning, fishermen find her near St. Anthony Falls, the water slicking over stone, the air sharp with dawn. The phone starts again, almost immediately. "I'm sorry I killed her," the caller sobs. I can't stop." He begs them to catch him. He begs them to forgive him. He does both things at once, and the line clicks quiet, as if he has absolved himself by speaking. Pattern is comfort to detectives because it promises an end if you follow it long enough. The pattern here breathes and shifts like something alive. The caller uses payphones. He hovers near hospitals and transit lines, places where people drift in and out under fluorescent light. He sounds like a man who wants to be stopped until you realize he keeps calling because no one has stopped him yet. Operators learn to place the microphone close, to soothe without promising, to pull traces and timestamps. The map tightens. August, thick and airless. A 19-year-old woman on Lake Street needs a ride. Her name is Denise Williams. The man who picks her up has a soft voice and a smile like he practices it. He turns down a side street that has too much shadow for afternoon. The first stab is a screwdriver glancing off bone, the second is not. She bleeds and thinks about dying and decides not to. When he leans in again, she finds a bottle, smashes it, and drags the edge across his face. The shock in his eyes buys her seconds. She flings herself out and runs, screaming, into the open where strangers make themselves into guardians by standing between her and the car. The attacker leaves a trail without meaning to. Blood on the seat, blood on his shirt, blood in his shoes. He needs stitches. In a city that keeps ledgers and weights, a man with a slashed face will eventually need to give his real name to someone behind a counter who asks for insurance. When he does, the wires hum. The police trace the call for help to a hospital. In the hallway, under a buzzing light, a man named Paul Michael Stephani sits with gauze to his cheek, trembling. He looks smaller than the voice. He looks ordinary in the way people look ordinary before you hear what they have done. They book him on attempted murder and soon on the killing of Barbara Simons, the evidence tying knots that hold. Pay phones near his job, fibers, the path of a car that never learned to keep secrets. The tapes play in court and the air changes. Jurors shift, not because they pity him, but because the crying is so real, it feels like being manipulated by the air itself. He gets prison and steel doors and a schedule that tells him when to breathe. He denies the rest. He will not admit to the first survivor, or to the girl from the bus station with the careful smile, or to the woman in the bathtub whose quiet house feels louder now than any bar. Years pass. Cancer gnaws at him from the inside out, and the timeline turns cruel in a new way. In 1997, he asks to talk. The voice on the recording is older now, less air through the nose, more gravel. He says he wants a priest. He says he wants clean pages before the last chapter ends. He points detectives to the riverbank where he killed Kimberly Compton. He tells them about the house where Kathleen Greening drew her last bath. He talks about the first girl, the one who lived, and how her hair looked in the snow. He says the calls were him. He says he was sorry then, and he is sorry now. The room that hears this does not cheer. It just goes quiet in a different way. What do you do with a killer who sobs? Some people tell themselves it proves he felt something human under the monster and take comfort in that. Others say the tears are part of the hunt, a way to turn the act into theater, to choreograph the cops and the press around his pain so the story always returns to him. Dispatchers who worked those nights know the third answer. Crying changes nothing. The line still goes dead. The address still lands on a street where the squad car cannot drive fast enough. The body still waits. The nickname turned the man into a headline, but the real story lives in the dispatchers who kept their voices steady when the line went hot, in the cops who ran toward Riverlight in winter, in the women who became unwilling landmarks on a city map. It lives in the waitress who remembered a name, in the stranger who opened a door for a bleeding girl, in the nurse who did not get to finish her book. It lives in a city that tightened its stare around payphones and learned how to hear tears as evidence, not absolution. Listen to the tapes once and you think you know the shape of it, the apologetic killer haunted by himself. Listen a second time and you hear the craft under the sobbing, the careful phrases, the withheld names, the way he seeks mercy without offering truth. By the third listen, you are counting seconds, marking where the line clicks, thinking about the person on the other end who must steady their hands and choose the next question, because choosing wrong might mean the map grows another red pin by morning. He died in prison, not long after confession opened the sealed rooms. The city eased a little. The families did not. Not really. The tapes remain, artifacts of a voice that wanted to be both punished and pitied, that wanted to be caught and kept special for the way he trembled. The only useful lesson, the one worth carrying, is colder than drama. A voice can learn to cry on command. A knife does not need an audience. And when the phone rings in the dark, with someone begging you not to talk, you memorize the sound of the clock and pull every number you can from the breath between words, because compassion must live beside the arithmetic of finding. Some stories end when a gavel drops. This one ends the way it began, with a voice on a line and the sound of breathing that doesn't belong to you. You stand in the calm of your own room and imagine the stations where those calls once landed, the glow of green lamps, the thumb on a reel, the shorthand on a pad, the way a whole city leaned toward a speaker, listening for a clue between sobs. The killer's tears are long since dry. The recordings don't change. What matters is the knowledge they left behind. Regret without responsibility is just another weapon, and a steady listener can be the first, and sometimes only, wall against it. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.